Hey, Foot Clan, before we get into the episode, we're going to be talking about busts. So prepare yourself. Before we do that, I want to remind you about The Secret to Victory. It's a new podcast from Gatorade and Gimlet Creative about how the best athletes in the world use defeat to fuel a win. This week, you'll hear from Matt Ryan on the Falcons' Super Bowl loss and how he's preparing for the season ahead. Visit Gatorade.com/podcast to listen now or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the Play Draft Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
We're back again.
Oh, it's going to be a good show.
It's going to be a great show, Jason.
I apologize for saying it was going to be good. I was foolish. So good, so great.
The NFL season is nearly here. Andy, Mike, and Jason, the Fantasy Footballers, back again for another jam-packed podcast full of fantasy football knowledge and goodness, and there'll be some mispronounced words involved on this show, no doubt.
This is
No doubt.
No doubt. Don't speak, Mike. See what I did there? Don't speak.
Just
I know
proceed.
just what you're saying. Anyways, this is one of the hardest episodes to do, is the busts episode, because when you say that a player is going to bust, that it's just difficult to put that on someone. You know,
Don't you put that evil on me?
Exactly. It's from our perspective. This is the one show. It's like, man, I just don't want to. I don't want to put this label on someone, but I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I got two guys that I am absolutely fine putting this label on.
Well,
today.
and if you call it these are the
Right.
avoids, people are like, come on,
Nope,
you're
got
not
to
bringing it.
draw a line in the sand. Look, when you're listening to this podcast, this episode, we are on a flight to Toronto. We're going to be doing a live show at the Fantasy Sports Show in Toronto, Canada. We do have our passports,
Yes.
and so we will be presumably allowed in to the country, and we're going to have a lot of fun there. So if you're around that area in Toronto, come on by. We will be there for both Saturday and Sunday. Going to be a lot of fun. Today we are talking busts on the show. We've got a great episode ahead. If you want to follow the show, follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. If you want to join our community, if you want to join some good leagues, if you want to talk with great people, check out jointhefoot.com. And look, we're going to get right into it. I thought this was a great quick question. I saw this come through on YouTube, where we also are. We're on YouTube. That's how I saw it.
All right.
And they said, look, this was comment on the very popular My Guys episode, which, by the way, I'm very confident in My Guys, but I saw a lot of people drafting some of our guys, so I'm excited to see how well these guys perform. Here was the quick question. Who are your not My Guys? All right? Which players do you not want to touch with a 10-foot pole? Which guys do you not want to roster under any circumstances? And I think this is different than picking a bust. A bust is saying, hey, I'm going to look at the stats from 2016. I'm going to say, this guy's going to let you down this year based on his average draft position, based on how you think he'll perform in this offense. This is more, maybe you believe that about this guy, but you also you're just not even going to let yourself put him on the roster.
So I can answer this one based on what you're saying. It's not necessarily that you're calling for a bust, but he's just not your guy, and for some reason you can't draft him.
He is not your guy.
That's how I am this year with Isaiah Crowell.
And it makes me sad.
Yeah. Isaiah Crowell is up in my rankings. I said this the other day. When I look at my stats and how many carries I've given him, how many rushing yards he's going to get, I can't move him down. I just can't. I believe in it. I am not calling for a bust from Isaiah Crowell, but the truth is, every single time that I'm on the clock and Isaiah Crowell is my highest ranked player, according to my own personal rankings, I always end up taking the guy behind him. I'm like, no, PPR, I'm going to go Dalvin Cook. No, I just can't get myself to pull the trigger on the Cleveland Browns starting running back, not knowing all the tumultuous situations. Who's the quarterback? Who's the quarterback the next week? I just can't believe in it. So Isaiah Crowell is a guy that I am not calling for a bust from him, but he would qualify as a not my guy right now.
That's fair. Fair enough. I mean, it's not the most statistical argument, but it might be the most accurate one, saying I'm not going to buy into the starting running back of the Cleveland Browns. I like winners. That probably won't go together with Isaiah Crowell.
No,
Mike, who's
all right.
your not my guy?
All right, if you've listened to the show for a while, you will not be surprised by this. If you're new to the show,
You might be.
you'll probably be surprised by this. My not my guy is Melvin Gordon. Now, this
I can totally see that with you.
and the statement of with a 10-foot pole I won't touch him, that's not true at all. Because at the right value or the right draft position, I would gladly draft Melvin Gordon. But my right draft position means there is a 0% chance that I will get Melvin Gordon, who's going to go at the back of the first round or right at the beginning of the second round. He was amazingly consistent. Essentially 100% of his games, he was a running back 1 or 2. He's on a solid offense. He's in my top 10 for my projections.
He's not your guy.
He's not my guy. I have it would not surprise me at all to see those touchdowns just cut in half from what he put up last year. And if they cut in half, Melvin Gordon will be disappointing. And so
You have no faith that he can reproduce.
It's for a guy to go from 0 touchdowns to scoring every single game and really needing those touchdowns on a lot of his strong fantasy games. That gives me pause. That gives me concern. So he's not a guy who I would draft in the first round.
Now, if you are a Melvin Gordon truther out there, I think it's important to understand he's my number 4 running back.
Yeah, Andy loves
I love Melvin Gordon. I don't like the rookie didn't score, so he got 12, so it has to go down. I like the offense. I like Melvin Gordon. But look, that's your prerogative, and I totally see that with Melvin Gordon. You've never really bought in to the long term, and that means you're not drafting him, and that's fine.
Yeah, as a show, I think you stand more alone against Melvin Gordon. I can see the argument.
Me and the cheese are fine over here.
yeah. I can see the argument for touchdown regression and worries about those, but I'm much closer with Andy in the sense that I think he is a really good running back on a good offense with touchdown opportunity. Whether or not he will actually score, it's one of the harder things to predict.
And I almost went with a similar guy in that category for me, which is Jordan Howard, where I've kind of faded on the super high upside in Chicago, the emergence of Tariq Cohen and his ability on third down. I didn't go that direction because I would draft Jordan Howard for sure. I went with all the Patriots running backs.
Because you're scared.
Oh, of course I'm scared.
I don't blame him, man.
Here's the
I don't
thing.
either.
I want one. I want one, but I can't anymore. I'm not touching James White. I'm not touching Deion Lewis. I'm not touching Mike Gillison. I'm not touching Rex Burkhead.
That's all of them.
That's all of them. Just those 4. So, look, I mean, you go from Gillislee with the hype to Gillislee's hurt, then Burkhead with the hype, and then Burkhead's banged up. And then, look, Deion Lewis with the second team, and James White's the Super Bowl hero. Look, game to game, it's probably going to be somebody different. And one of the guys I'm going to talk about later is going to highlight the problem with Patriots running backs. So I'm going to bring it up later. I'm going to tease it like that.
Ooh.
We'll get into it, but I'm staying away. You know who's not my guys? All the Patriots running backs.
Yeah, I really like the Patriots running backs at value in best ball leagues because there will be so many points that they're scoring. I mean, if you want to say how many rushing touchdowns do the Patriots get as a team next year, that's probably going to be a good number. How many receiving touchdowns to the running backs? Probably going to be a good number. There's fantasy production, but if you're in a normal home league, I totally see your point here, Andy. You can't draft them and say, okay, now I'm going to start him this week because Bill Belichick can game plan.
Belichick?
I think I heard Belichick too.
Bill Pelican.
Well, Bill Belichick.
Gobbling up fish.
If I said that a little bit too fast
I
for y'all.
promise mispronounced words.
Yes, you did. And we do
have
not
delivered.
We do not disappoint on that. He is the type where coming off of a monster performance and you say, okay, it's Gillislee for sure, and there's a good matchup, he will literally the next game give him a carry, and you get a goose egg. You get nothing because he decided in his game plan that today it's Deion Lewis.
If you took the 4 guys and you gave their stats, cumulative stats to 2 guys, I think you'd have 2 top 24 running backs in fantasy.
Sure.
But you will have maybe week to week you won't know, and we'll get into that more later. So those are the not my guys. We're going to jump right into the bus. Before we do that, I want to remind you, FootClanGiveaway.com, a signed David Johnson helmet. We are giving that away to the listeners. Thank you for listening to the show, for subscribing to the podcast. You're why we do this show year-round. And, look, we're dedicated to making this the best fantasy football podcast, even when we're on the road like we are right now, recording from Anaheim, California, at the podcast movement.
Not in Disneyland.
Yeah, we're basically...
I tried.
We're
Foot Clan.
sacrificing.
I tried.
Is this the worst place in the world to be, directly outside of Disneyland? Like, of all the
you're
possible
not going.
destinations, if you're not going to Disneyland, is it the worst to be right outside of it?
I think so. I mean, there's some bad places I can think of, but this is right on.
Well,
right near the top.
Let's keep talking about some very negative things.
Bus.
Yeah. I was going to say, I feel like the rich man looking over at Disneyland going, oh, there's a gulf here. I can't get over there.
Yeah.
All right.
Mike's tried to talk us into it.
Maybe.
See, there's two things on this trip that will destroy the lives of our wives back at home. One is if we joke constantly like we have been that we're just going to go to Disneyland instead of doing any of the things we have at the podcast convention. Two is the Game of Thrones finale is Sunday night, and we just say that we're going to watch the finale without them in Disneyland.
Oh, I'm going to watch the finale without them. That's for
Mike,
sure. It'll be hard to do in Disneyland because we'll be in Toronto unless HBO leaks it on accident again.
But Mike, I heard him on the phone saying he had a very important podcast appointment with M.Mouse.
Yes.
That he had to meet over at Disneyland. Look, I'm going to start it off with
It's on a railroad, too, a really fast runaway railroad.
Yes, yeah. Got to meet him on the commute. Look, I'm going to start this one out because it continues what I said in the Not My Guys. My first bus pick here, and all of our, again.
Was stolen right out from underneath
Yeah, I
me.
got the name in there before you could. All of our consensus bust picks are in the Ultimate Draft Kit at ultimatedraftkit.com. These are our personal. We each picked two out for this show. And apparently Mike agrees with me.
Yes, I do.
Look, it's LeGarrette Blount, running back for now of the Philadelphia
That's a good qualifier.
Eagles.
Now.
Here's what was interesting to me. Out of the top 24 finishers in 2016, there and is that the best year you could ever expect from LeGarrette Blount?
Yeah.
18 touchdowns?
Yes, for sure.
Playing for
Without
the
a
New
doubt.
England Patriots.
Yes,
Okay.
100%. Career year. He will not have a better year.
Best year, career year for LeGarrette Blount in 2016. No one. So out of that top 24, no one had a higher percentage of RB3 or below performances out of that top 24. So even in his perfect season, even in his banner year, LeGarrette Blount doing what he does, which is run the ball a couple yards into the end zone, he still wasn't the consistent force you want from the running back position.
Yeah, for 18 touchdowns to not be running back one or two every single week,
you could
like
still,
a la Melvin Gordon.
Right, you could still make a mistake by starting LeGarrette Blount last year. So now the preseason eye test tells me he's slow. I mean, so does his career. And he's battled weight issues. That report came out. The way they were running him in the offense in the preseason looked like they didn't know what they were doing with it. Rumors about Wendell Smallwood could win the job, or, you have Donnell Pumphrey and Sproles in the game. Look, he's still a fifth-round pick right now. That's my bust pick. I don't want LeGarrette Blount in the fifth round. Please, no.
He earlier, it seemed like he was safe for volume. And you knew you weren't drafting a superstar running back. You were drafting someone on a team that runs a lot. They had a lot of rushing touchdowns. I mean, look at Ryan Matthews with his 8 rushing touchdowns despite not being on the field all that much. So it was, I'm going to get the volume for the Philadelphia Eagles, but just watching him in the preseason, they can't possibly continue to go forward with LeGarrette Blount, even if he stays on the team for the beginning of the year, which maybe he gets cut or whatever. But throughout the year, there's no way that the Eagles can stay with Blount's production unless you see major improvement.
He's not going to be a factor in the passing game. He needs to be on the goal line. You're going to be in a Lindale White situation with LeGarrette Blount where, you better get on the goal line and give him the ball, and he's got to get in. And then maybe it'll work out. So that's my first bust. Let's go ahead and kick it over to Jason. Jason's all enthusiastic about crushing my hopes and dreams here.
Yeah, I got
so
two
who's your
guys.
bust?
I got two guys that you like a little bit more, but I'm going to go ahead and start here with my first of two ageism arguments, and that's going to be I'm being ageist against Brandon Marshall. I love Brandon Marshall. I like the dude. I like him as a wide receiver.
There's a compliment sandwich coming.
Yeah, you darn right it is. I hope he succeeds.
It's going to be a big Sir Mix-a-Lot coming up.
But I think he is being way overdrafted and will bust for where you're getting him. He's currently being drafted as a wide receiver 2. Okay, yes, last year when he turned 32, which is, getting up there for an NFL football player, yeah, the quarterback play was bad. But you cannot horrific. Mike,
okay,
no,
you're
you're
sugarcoating that.
Your face said, oh, you can't just say bad. No, the quarterback play was atrocious.
Thank you.
But that does not give 100% of the burden there. Brandon Marshall played 15 games. He played pretty much the whole season, and he put up 59 receptions for 788 yards and 3 touchdowns. Yeah, Fitzpatrick was bad, but it's not like Fitzpatrick was some great quarterback the year before. He didn't get it done. And now he goes from age 32 to age 33.
Is that how it works?
He's also going from a wide receiver 1 on his team, the predominant target.
My buddy Benjamin doesn't do it that way.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. But now he goes from being a wide receiver 1 to being a wide receiver 2 at best.
That's why he's being drafted as a wide receiver 2. He is a 2.
Yeah, on his own team. And he's possibly even the 3rd target in that offense if he ends up falling behind Sterling Shepard, who looked great his rookie year. So he's that 2A, 2B target in the offense. So are you telling me that now all of a sudden he's a year older, he's less a center point of the offense, and Eli Manning is going to fix everything in the world? You're going to put all of your, hopes and dreams on Eli to manufacture a ton of touchdowns? I've talked about this before. If you look at Eli Manning's best years, you look where he's had multiple good receiving options. You just can't get that many targets going Brandon Marshall's way. And, I think gone are the days when Brandon Marshall was a PPR machine. You're going to need the touchdowns, and you're going to need them to go to Brandon Marshall. I moved Brandon Marshall up a few days ago, but I moved him up to like 35 or 36. He's being drafted as a wide receiver 2. Yeah, I know. I was really low.
The argument is compelling, especially the part where you said you're going to put your hopes and dreams on Eli Manning. I don't really want to do that. And I will definitely concede.
You're talking to a 2-time Super Bowl champion, my friends.
The other things that are in the mix there is player switching teams. We tend to sugarcoat that. We just talked about the 10 tips and tricks show about not romanticizing the past, not being sentimental. There's sentimentality that comes with Brandon Marshall ownership because you're saying, ooh, this guy was a 1 for so long. So I like it. We're going to get into we'll give Mike his shot at delivering a bust for you. Before we do that, we want to, of course, thank our sponsor, Harry's. Harry's Razors. Look, for decades, we know this, one big razor company. They have relentlessly increased their prices. They have reaped immense profits at the expense of the customers. There wasn't another great player in the game. But look, Jeff and Andy, the owners at Harry's, they came around and they said, look, we're fed up. We're fed up with this. We're fed up about getting ripped off, and we're going to change the business. And so they bought their own blade factory. Look, I can tell you from personal experience, and I know a lot of guys, we have a routine. We do the same thing all the time, and I always used other blades. I tried Harry's out. I've been using them for over 2 years now. They're a comfortable shave. They're more cost efficient. It's part of my routine now, and I'm not spending that big money. So listen, Harry's is so confident you're going to love their blades. They'll give you their free trial set. You just have to cover the shipping. Your free trial set includes a weighted ergonomic razor handle, 5 precision-engineered blades with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover. So you get a $13 value for you to try. Stop messing around and start shaving with Harry's today by claiming your free trial offer. $13 for free. Just cover the shipping. To get your free trial set, including all of the things I said above, go to harrys.com/footballers. That's harrys.com/footballers.
And a big thank you to Pristine Auction. Great supporter of the show. Look, if you've listened for a long time, you've heard us talk about them forever. But the truth is, all the giveaways that we do, all the stuff up in our studio where we go for great gifts, it's genuinely Pristine Auction. We used Pristine Auction before we ever knew who Pristine Auction was, and we found out they were local, and we sought them out as a sponsor because we're like, this place is awesome. This is not, this is a match made in heaven. If you play fantasy football and you like sports and you like this cool stuff, go to Pristine Auction, get some incredible signed memorabilia, things that you just don't think you can afford or you don't think you can find, and search their thousands of daily auctions, see what they have, buy amazing stuff, put it up on your wall, impress your friends, your family, and nay, yourself. And you won't be disappointed. Check them out. It's PRISTINE auction.com. Pristine Auction. Great friends of the show for all signed sports memorabilia.
All right, this is perfect. Mike, you got to do number one on your list here.
Yes.
So lead it off. Who's your bust candidate?
I'm going to throw this guy out because he's changing teams too. And fantasy players are very excited
Being
about
drafted very high.
I don't get it. And that's Martellus Bennett, who's going in the 7th round of drafts. Last year, the tight ends received 16.6% of Aaron Rodgers' targets. You're telling me you're going to take a tight end in the 7th round and the team can't even get 17% of the targets? I mean, Aaron Rodgers does not use his tight end. I went back through his entire career as being a starter. There's been twice of his 9 years that a tight end has hit 8 touchdowns. Twice. Other than that, it's 5 or less. The tight end with the most touchdowns. There's a lot of tight ends and touchdowns. It doesn't happen. Aaron Rodgers throws to his wide receivers. And you want to say, well, Jared Cook, he was their big acquisition and he was hurt. He was still on the field for 30% of snaps. Richard Rodgers was on the field for 55% of snaps. They're not catching touchdowns because they don't, because Aaron Rodgers doesn't look for it. I understand people are buying in even more because we saw, Bennett, he scored in the preseason. Stop. I'm not buying.
You're not buying. Interesting.
It's not like Richard Rodgers is gone either.
Correct. And the thing is, here's the worst part about what Martellus Bennett will do. And I'm not knocking him as a player. I'm just knocking his situation. He's going to have a monster game. He's going to have probably 3 great games. And every single time you will rebuy back in, you'll put him in your starting roster, you'll pick him up off of waivers because he's bound to get dropped, I'm telling you. And you'll go, I got it. I got a top 5 tight end, and then there goes. He's just going to crap all over your starting roster when you have the courage to finally play him. He's going to be so inconsistent. Rodgers does not have the history of throwing to the tight end. Even Jermichael Finley, years and years and years ago, he was one of the tight ends who got up to 8 touchdowns, but he only sniffed that area once. He was never even close. So I'm just not buying in to Aaron Rodgers changing his entire offensive philosophy and going to Martellus Bennett.
I have looked into this before. If you listen months ago, and I used to have that same narrative that you have, and then I realized on a per-game basis he actually did use good tight ends when Jermichael Finley was there. That one season that he had more than 8.
Season.
No. But the reason that it was only that one is because he would only play 5 games the other season, 6 games the other season. In those games, he was on pace to be a tight end 1. All of that being said, the draft capital that you have to spend in the 7th round, a 7th round replacement for Martellus Bennett, and the up and down nature that probably will come from being a little bit more touchdown dependent, I don't personally call for a Martellus Bennett bust. I don't think that's going to happen as far as end of year rankings. But he would be more along the lines of, to me, a guy that I probably won't have in a single league because where you have to draft him, I actually believe in tight ends I like much better than him, much later than
Bennett
him.
Or
right now,
Zach Ertz.
Yeah, I'll take Ertz.
Hunter Henry.
Right now, Martellus Bennett is a 7th round draft pick, and I'm not going to have him on my team. But I don't predict a bust either because I think one of the things you're looking from a tight end perspective, if you don't have an upper echelon guy, you want a good quarterback and a chance to score. Both of those things exist. Now, I'm not going to call the bust like you did, but I believe Martellus Bennett will affect my bust in a big way. So I'm going to give you my number 2 bust is Davante Adams. Okay? Davante Adams last year exploded onto the scene, right? Led, 12 touchdowns for Davante Adams. It's the breakout campaign. And I know people love him. And Packers fans are mad at me for not loving him. But he only
I
had
feel like most people hate Davante Adams.
Not anymore.
Not Packers
Not
fans.
once you score 12 touchdowns. And here's the thing. Even last year, and what? Again, my argument for my two busts, Blount and Adams, is a perfect scenario type of situations for me. He still only had 75 receptions. He was still a wide receiver 1 or 2 only 43% of the time. That's 18th best from a consistency perspective. That's behind Taylor Gabriel, even in a perfect season. You had an unhealthy Randall Cobb that wasn't involved with the offense. Now you add Bennett, who you saw it in the preseason already. Aaron Rodgers can put the ball at a point where he can go up and high point it, and he scores. He's going to score some touchdowns. Even Mike admitted he's going to have some flashy games. And I keep hearing this name. Look, Aaron Rodgers, he always sustains 2 wide receivers. And James Jones' name gets brought up. Well, look, James Jones had his outlier touchdown season, 15. You know what he followed it up with? 3 and then 6. Okay? So it wasn't like that was consistent. Outside of Jordy Nelson, who, by the way, Jordy Nelson, he had 15 touchdowns. He followed it up with an 8. Or I'm sorry, a 7. So it's not something that you can bank on. We have always talked about you cannot bank on those touchdowns all of the time. Even the great Jordy Nelson goes from 15 to 7, then to 8 the year after. TDs are hard to predict. You have Bennett as a red zone factor. You have Randall Cobb. And so, look, at the end of the day, I think you cannot bank on somebody with 75 receptions in an offense. Now, look, you want to take a shot. If he repeats the touchdowns, he'll be fine. I just see so much turnover at that position unless you're Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, or one of the big guys.
Yeah, one of the keys to fantasy football when you're in the draft portion of the season, when you're looking at season-long predictions and trying to get the order and the rankings and establish all of that, is that when it comes to predicting success, volume is more important than touchdowns usually at just projections. And so you're right in the sense that Davante Adams does not have the volume. He is not going to be that 90-plus reception guy. So the touchdowns will have to come to capitalize on his draft spot. Now, Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. So it's tough. I'm amazed both of you took an Aaron Rodgers
target
option and said they're going to bust because that's weighty. I mean, he can throw 40 touchdowns easy. In fact, I think in the Jordy Nelson era, while he's had a full season with Jordy, he's averaged 40 touchdowns, which is unbelievable. So it's risky, but the touchdowns, I think the biggest guy that could make both of you right is Randall Cobb. Certainly could go back up on the touchdown. So I'm going to go with my next ageist comment.
Yeah, you don't like anybody over the age of 22 playing in the NFL.
Yes, 22 is my cutoff.
Right.
My dynasty team is all rookies. No, my guy is someone that, Andy, earlier in the offseason you were starting to really get high on. The reports have been great about him from camp, but
supposed to play
I'm not
this week.
buying in to Adrian Peterson. I know if you listen to the My Guy episode, look, one of my guys was Mark Ingram. I mean, so obviously if I think Mark Ingram is going to succeed, I think that Adrian Peterson is probably overdrafted considering he's going well ahead of Mark Ingram. Adrian Peterson right now is being drafted as a running back 2. Similar to Brandon Marshall, he is an older guy who had a bad season, is changing teams, and now is supposed to be totally okay. And you might say, well, Jason, he didn't have a bad season. He got injured. And I would say, kind of. I mean, yes. Yes, he got injured. You're right. And yes, the sample size, I will grant you, it is extremely
it's like 30
small.
carries, isn't it?
He had 20 carries in game 1, 19 carries in game 1 for 31 yards against the vaunted Tennessee Titan run defense last year. And then he followed that up. The next game, he had 12 carries. Now, that last carry, let's say that doesn't count. He got injured. 11 carries. He had 19 yards against Green Bay's vaunted run defense last year. He was not good. Then he tore his meniscus. He tore his meniscus and was quickly able to recover. And if you don't remember, he actually was back from that injury last year and played in Week 15, their 14th game, where he got 6 carries before having knee and groin injuries reoccur. And now I realize Hall of Fame player, incredible, good offense, all of these good things. But he is a year older, and he is much older than Brandon Marshall is when you talk positionally. Positionally, 30 is usually that age at running back that you tend to fall off. And now he's going to be 32 years old. He's coming off an injury, and you say, well, look how good he did coming off of his ACL injury back in the day. Sure. So did Jamal Charles. When Jamal Charles had an ACL injury the first time, man alive, did he come back on fire. He was great. But when he got injured later in his career, when he was a little bit older, he lost a step. And hopefully this weekend, when we finally see him back on the field in preseason, Jamal Charles is great. And, maybe Adrian Peterson is going to be great. But what I see is this. I see that it's rare for an older player who loses a step to then come back at an old age and regain it all. That's pretty much my crux. I think he's a high. I think he's a high.
I got to talk too.
A high risk for injury to reoccur. He's no longer the focal point of the offense. He's always been a guy who has benefited from carries, better at the end of games than at the beginning because he wears the defense down type of runner, and that's probably not going to happen. Is his touchdown opportunity going to be up and high because of Drew Brees? Sure, but I think injuries and where he's being drafted, ahead of a bunch of starters.
Mike, do you want me to go or do you want?
No, you go ahead.
Here's all I want to say about that. I wanted to listen to your argument on the bust of Adrian Peterson, and I wanted to say this. I wanted to say, look, Jay, I moved him down, which I did like a week ago. We talked about Mark Ingram. Alvin Kamara's looked good. A lot of running backs in the mix there. I wanted to say, you know what? I really agree with the arguments you're making, but I don't like your arguments. I don't like all of them. Some of them make sense to me, but I'm not erasing 2,381 Adrian Peterson carries in his career because of 37 last year. I'm not saying a guy's lost a step because of 37 carries on, we want to use the vaunted word. That was the bad offensive line in Minnesota, right? And you give a guy 37 carries and you erase a career of production at 4.9 a carry. I get some of the arguments. Some of the ones you made sense. But we've also talked a lot about, on the last show, all the arguments you made for Mark Ingram. You still have to look at those and say, what's the real? Maybe the ceiling isn't there for Adrian Peterson like it has been over the last 10 years of his career, but he's never played a full season without double-digit touchdowns. You just talked about how productive the Saints were at the running back position. So bust only due to injury. That's the only way I think you get pure bust out of Adrian Peterson.
Real
and I want to hear what Mike says.
Yeah, I do too,
I have no idea what side Mike's going on.
But just to retort, if I have not been clear enough, because I think based on what you're saying I wasn't, I see Adrian Peterson as a very high injury risk. Inside Injury sees him as an elevated injury risk.
Okay.
He came back from the knee issue last year and hurt his groin and his knee. That's my biggest issue is actually the injury risk for being drafted as a running back too.
Yeah. And we'll say this. I'll let Mike go. If Ingram or Peterson are injured or something happens, what a backfield to own.
There was a running back who he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, but I'm going to go out on a limb and declare this running back will get into the Hall of Fame. He was coming off of 8 straight years of 1,000+ rushing yards, and then he moved teams, and everyone was very, very excited for this player. His name is Steven Jackson. He went to the Falcons, and he was older, changed teams, and his career was done. It completely fell apart. And this, I'm just saying, this reminds me very much
it's a pretty
of what
good comparison.
Adrian Peterson has done, where huge career, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, but the career is done. He's on the last fumes of his professional career.
It's funny because before you said Steven Jackson, I thought, really, you think Matt Forte is going to get into the Hall of Fame?
I wasn't going to say Forte.
No, I know, but my point is he was another guy who had a prolific, long, great career, changes teams at an old age, and had injury problems and
what
risks
do you
and looked bad.
expect from Adrian Peterson is the problem. I mean, that's the question, too.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, you bring up Steven Jackson. His career, it wasn't a case of Arian Foster switching teams. He played 2 seasons in Atlanta. He scored 6 touchdowns each of his seasons. Matt Forte was productive in New York.
You're glossing over the yardage.
Well,
I'm not. No. He was 500 and he was 700.
Yeah.
I know what it was. I'm just saying, if you got that from Adrian Peterson this year, 6 touchdowns and 700 yards.
You'd be so disappointed for the fact that he is drafted right now as an RB2.
Yeah, it would.
That's my point.
If you got
That's why
500
he's gonna
yards,
be
Well, that's within the realm of possibility for sure.
Yeah. So
I hope not, but it is definitely possible.
I am likely staying away from
I like
Adrian
this.
Peterson.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison.
It's a good debate because plenty of people out there obviously love him, disagree with us wholeheartedly, and
there's a lot
if
to gain and lose.
If there's a guy with a chip on his shoulder who
the
wants to prove us
the
wrong,
problem with doubting it is it's Adrian Peterson.
You don't want to doubt Adrian Peterson.
Yeah. So, but at some point, his body will be done.
Just so you know, I have Adrian Peterson.
Age never loses.
With Father Time.
Father Time is undefeated right now. Frank Gore's trying to change that, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I have
even Fred Jackson couldn't do that.
I have Adrian Peterson down for 710 rushing yards and 7.5 touchdowns.
Where does that put him on your rankings?
He is
because that's reasonable.
In a half-point PPR, it puts him 32.
And he's being drafted where?
22, I think, as an RB2.
All right, compelling arguments. Mike, close us out on the bus, baby, and we'll get into some mailbag today. Let's answer some listener questions from the Foot Clan. But first,
first for me,
Mike's bringing
to shut it down.
He's bringing more hate.
All right, DeAndre Hopkins. I'm sorry to tell you, Foot Clan fantasy football players, I don't understand why people think that Tom Savage or Deshaun Watson is
the solution.
It rectifies everything for DeAndre Hopkins. Incredible wide receiver, incredible talent, being drafted as the 14th wide receiver in PPR.
How did he finish last year?
According to Fantasy Football Calculator. I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe it was somewhere in the 30s. Jason, you can pull up the exact number. But here's the problem with DeAndre Hopkins. 14th wide receiver. Last year, he was a wide receiver 12.5% of his games. Last year, he was a wide receiver 1 or 2 in 37.5% of his games, which that's not the worst. Here's the worst. 56% of the time, he was a wide receiver 4 or worse.
That's atrocious.
And you had to play DeAndre Hopkins every single week. Did you have the intestinal fortitude to bench DeAndre Hopkins? No way. There's no way you did.
He finished last year as the wide receiver 36.
Thank you. Wide receiver 36.
You know what this is? This situation? This is when you have to take your kid to the dentist because you know it's better. It's best for them, but the whole experience is painful because I love DeAndre Hopkins.
Yes.
Like you compare, for some reason, him and Allen Robinson, they come to my mind together because of their situation. I think DeAndre Hopkins is a better receiver than Allen Robinson by far. I think he's amazing. But what's best for fantasy owners is to listen to Mike, and I hate it.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Last year, Kenny Britt on the Cleveland, or I'm sorry, not on the Browns, on the Rams.
Jared Goff
was a wide receiver 1 or 2. It's a very, very similar percentage, and he busted less than Hopkins. You on a week-to-week basis, you would have been better off playing Kenny Britt with Case Keenum, with Jared Goff throwing him the ball. Now, it should be better. I will give you this. It should be better than last year because Brock Osweiler, my goodness, the worst. The worst. So, Tom Savage, Deshaun Watson, at least there's a new hope, right? We were going Star Wars here. There's a hope.
You realize that Kenny Britt might have been this close, and you're talking a millimeter from going Goff to Osweiler?
No. That's not something you want to hear, especially if you've just consumed
imagine.
food.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. I think it'll be better for Hopkins. But wide receiver 14?
No, that's a problem. I wish you would have told me he's being drafted at 20.
Yeah.
At
that's,
20,
that's
I'm
palatable.
I'm cozy.
But I think there is.
Let me ask Jason a question on it. Is there upside for DeAndre Hopkins?
No.
Gosh dang it.
Well, here's the thing. If you're in a PPR league, there's a little bit more hope, right? Because he will.
Because his mom wrote me a letter and asked what the chances are that her son could return to glory.
Yeah, the problem is, so last year no one had I think there were only 2 wide receivers that were in the wide receiver 1 range with 6 touchdowns or fewer. One of those is Julio Jones because he's an unbelievable wide receiver with a great prolific offense, and he's the clear target of a great quarterback. The other was Amari Cooper, who again had an awesome season when it comes to elsewhere, has a great quarterback. And the year before it was even worse. I don't even think there was anyone with 6 or fewer touchdowns. And touchdowns are the reason why I have a hard time trusting DeAndre Hopkins. Because if he wants to get up to where he's already being drafted, right? So like you are drafting him at a spot that says he will do it, that he will be the wide receiver 14, which says he's probably going to need seven plus touchdowns.
Yeah.
Okay, 7 to get there, 8 to pass there, and with the Houston Texans offense and with the Houston Texans defense,
It's the defense.
Yeah.
it's going to be hard for him to do that.
All right.
Say
All right,
the
you're
last
right.
thing is because that's what they are. That's who the Texans are. They want to run the ball. They've got Miller, and maybe it's Foreman. I'm not getting into that.
They
right?
want to get into
run.
victory position and then put. It's like a bubble boy. You want to put the bubble around it and just
Yeah.
not let it go away.
Yeah, the year prior, I just wanted to vet what I said. The year prior, nobody had fewer in the top 12 receivers. Nobody had fewer than 8 touchdowns. So if you're hoping for a wide receiver 1 number from DeAndre Hopkins, you have to hope that he ends up with more touchdowns than he should have.
Look, all right. Time to get positive. Let's get into the mailbag.
Yeah, all right.
Mailbag.
See, I like that we're going positive now. We needed a mailbag on the show. It's
Yeah.
so hard to be so mean. I don't
It
like
is.
being mean.
All right, look, we love answering your questions. We love helping you win your league. If you have a question for the show, go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. Click the Submit a Question button. You can also dial our voicemail hotline. That number is 302-464-TFFB. Leave us your voicemail question. We're going to get into a voicemail question right off the bat here.
Hey, Ryan McCauley here. I'm in a 10-team league with 3 wide receivers and a flex. Do you think it's smart to go wide receiver heavy right off the bat so you get the cream of the crop? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's a good question because a lot of the times we talk about the value of running backs, and that's always in the context of a standardized format of quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, 1 tight end. Now you've got a flex, but 3 wide receivers. Mike, how does that change the situation?
Yeah, I mean you're changing the scarcity a little bit, and the only time I change my strategy when it comes to 3 wide and 2 running backs is simply if it's PPR.
Full PPR.
Point PPR. If it's anything but, like, if I'm talking 0.9 PPR, I'm still not changing my strategy. I don't know. I've never heard of a 0.9 PPR league.
Does it make you a lot less likely to start a draft running back? Because I don't think I would really like going running back if I'm theoretically, like you said, in a PPR or even a half point. I probably got to start 3 or 4 wide receivers.
I almost always am balanced.
Right.
I'm going running back, wide receiver, running back. It's pretty rare for me to come into the 3rd round.
It's just so much easier to find a wide receiver.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Where I'm not changing it, but when you're in PPR, wide receivers are just safer and they score more points, so it devalues a bit your reliance on having to make sure that your running backs are starters.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. It doesn't change my first few rounds. It'll change later. It'll change how many of each position do I end up with after the draft. Do I want more running backs than wide receivers? Do I need to be more balanced and have the same of each? Does this league only start 1 running back and more wide receivers? In which case, then I'll have more wide receivers and running backs. But the first few rounds, I'm probably not changing my strategy.
All right, Jason, good question here from J-Dub in Detroit.
Oh, J-Dub.
That's Brooks' hometown. He would probably say something if
Brooks,
he had a microphone on.
Do you know J-Dub?
You know J-Dub, Brooks? He's shaking his head.
No.
All right, look. Should I use – this is an ultimate draft quick
what
question.
a great question. Thank you for asking
Should
this question.
I use the top 200 rankings or tier-based rankings from the Ultimate Draft Kit? So this question is about how to use the Ultimate Draft Kit the best.
Great. I'm going to answer his question as if he said, just should I use the top 200 ranking? No, don't do it, and here's why.
Explain
Yes, I will
yourself.
explain it, okay? Because the top 200
I
ranking,
know, but Jason.
the top 200 ranking.
You got to help me, Mike. I got no voice.
But Jason, I like top 200 list.
Of course you do.
It's so
boys.
easy.
It's so easy because
know
all
where
you
to
got to
go.
do is you got to scratch from the top to the bottom.
That
right?
was my business partner, M. Mouse.
I
Yeah.
like it. Yeah, that's right.
With a top 200 list, when you have a top 200 rankings, it feels so much easier, and it makes you more confident because you see this wide receiver so much ahead of this running back, or this running back so much ahead of this wide receiver.
I throw all my blame on the fantasy footballers because I just took the. It's
right,
easy.
it's
the
what they
pick is
said.
for me.
But listen, you don't want to draft that way because rankings are super flawed in that methodology. When we do our best to try to make a top 200 that is legit, that is as good as we can put together.
But legitimately, you forced us to do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, our first UDK, we
men
did
of
not
the
even
people.
include a top 200. People wanted it so bad that we put it in there. But we are big proponents of tier-based drafting. What that means is you're drafting positionally within each position based on the tiers that are available at that position, looking and saying, there's a lot of guys left at this position, so I'm going to go elsewhere within the same tier, within the same group of quality type players. There's so many wide receivers here that I'm going to take one at running back. Now, if you're just going top 200, you're going to miss that. You're not going to be able to see the running backs grouped together to know, okay, yeah, the running back is lower here, but that's like the last guy where if you don't get him, you're going to be in Garbageville at running back. You want to look positionally. That's the much, much better way to draft. And if look, I'm happy we have a top 200. I'm glad we make it. We're happy to produce it for you, and I hope you never, ever use it.
If you want to
There's
see
a lot of weirdness going on
what
there,
the
Jay.
tier-based drafting looks like, it's easy. Flip back 3 episodes to the mock draft episode. Listen to us talk about the tiers and how we don't really talk about going through a top 200 list in any way because the draft is so fluid. Mike brings it up all the time. You got to stay water. You got to be willing to make adjustments, and you got to think a little more than just checking off a list.
Roster
but that's
construction.
why you're going to win your league. All right? Let's go to this one. Quincy in Harrisburg. High-risk player question says, Ezekiel Elliott or Rob Gronkowski in the 3rd round?
Ooh.
Who do you go with?
Ooh.
I'll take Rob Gronkowski. I like the value on Rob Gronkowski.
I mean, I was immediately going to jump in there with Gronk. And I'm going to stick with it. I'm sticking with it.
Yeah.
Rob Gronkowski in the 3rd. I mean, that's
You get a good value on it.
I'd be loving life.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I am as well.
All right.
But it's tempting, and even though we're all saying unanimously here that it's Gronk, it's not that clear cut. I think taking Zeke in the 3rd it could really pay off for you, but so could Gronk.
All
So
right.
I'll tell us a draft story, and because we've always talked about, or people have been asking, where do I take Zeke? Where do I jump in on him? I was in a 10-team home style league. And we did our draft, and I was at the turn.
This got hungry.
I was at the back. What?
Why?
Why did you get hungry?
I don't know. He said home style. I thought I was going to get some mashed potatoes
okay,
or something.
all right. So, but I'm at the back. I'm at the 9 pick, and it came around to the back of the 2nd round. Remember, it's a 10-team, and I'm like, I'm gonna take the gamble here that the person at the edge won't take Zeke, and maybe I'll grab him on the way in because I've talked about I'm more likely to take Zeke in the smaller leagues where I feel like I can get quality depth to absorb the suspension of 6 games. I gambled and lost. The person at the edge took Zeke, and as the draft went on more and more, I was very disappointed.
You're bummed out
in myself that I didn't take the risk on Zeke
Interesting.
in the back of the 2nd. So I've talked about it like I want him in the 4th and the 3rd. When the bullets were firing.
So in a world where you were
this was a real draft at the back of the 2nd, I was bummed that I missed out on it.
All right. Andrew in maybe the coolest place on earth. Andrew in Thunder Bay.
Thunder Bay.
Wow, that sounds like a ride at SeaWorld or something. Andrew in Thunder.
You didn't go with Disneyland?
Sorry.
It's all right. We're having withdrawals.
Did you say SeaWorld?
I did.
That's your go-to?
Probably because of Bay.
Yeah, it was because of Bay, man. Chill out.
Michael Bay.
All right, wondering which running back would benefit the most this season from the improvements to their team's offensive line.
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley. Andrew Whitworth, Greg Robinson. Locking down maybe the weakest part of their entire line is maybe one of the strengths now.
Yeah, we'll
I would
see.
also throw C.J. Anderson out there. Their offensive line was so bad last year, and they should be better this year.
They should put Paxton Lynch on the line.
That's not going to help anything. Do you need maybe a tight end?
I'm just
All
trying.
right.
I'm just trying to get him on the field.
Yeah. When in doubt, you convert to a receiver.
Yeah,
Go Terrell
that's
Pryor.
what I hear.
All right, that is it for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back very soon, and hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure you subscribe. Leave us those sweet iTunes reviews, and we'll keep bringing the goodness. Check out the Ultimate Draft Kit at ultimatedraftkit.com.
And come say hello
Yeah.
at the Fantasy Sports Show.
.com. This weekend, we'll be there. Come hang out.
All right, that is it, guys. Playdraft.com/ballers if you want to get in on Week 1 DFS and you want to draft your team. No more salary caps.
That's right.
Draft your team. We love drafting.
I know what I'm
Playdraft.com/ballers.
doing.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.